This episode is with Logan Kilpatrick. This is the guy that leads up product for Google's AI studio, and he just walks us right through it. And this is going to be super, super relevant to anyone who wants to build a business using AI, who want to leverage the multi-trillion-dollar technology that Google has built. You're not going to want to miss this one. Watch it to the end because there's a demo at the end that really blew my mind. Welcome to the Startup Ideas Podcast. Logan Kilpatrick on the show. This guy is the lead PM for Google's AI studio. Was at OpenAI, one of the earliest hires at OpenAI. But we're not here to talk about OpenAI. What are we here to talk about, Logan?
Yeah, Greg, thanks for having me on. We're here to talk about Gemini. We're here to talk about AI Studio, and we'll sort of go through the demo of AI Studio for folks who haven't used it before. Talk about the Gemini models, which are sort of the thing that is actually bringing the experience in AI Studio to life.
And what do you think people will get by the end of this episode?
Yeah, I'm hopeful you'll walk away with like an appreciation for one, the differentiated things that you can build with Gemini. And like I think AI Studio like brings a lot of those capabilities to life that just like aren't possible with other AI models or other AI services. But also like a little bit of like exploratory stuff. Like we have some like hints of early experiences, like early product experiences, which I don't think like fully work today, but like is the direction that we're heading in. And I'm hopeful this will plant the seeds for folks who want to like think about AI co-presence in the future and how that product experience might exist, et cetera, et cetera.
And just to be clear, it's not like Google wrote me a check so that you can come on. I just think that there's a huge opportunity in leveraging these tools for people to build businesses. I wanted you to teach us. So thanks for coming on. Yeah,
of course. I'm excited about this. Do you want to dive in or let's
go
next? Awesome.
This is a ADD crowd. So they want to see it.
Yeah, I love that. Let's look at AI Studio. So you sign into AI Studio, use your Google account, and this is like the default experience that you're dropped into. Again, the intent of AI Studio is like, how do we showcase the model's capabilities to their fullest? So you can like for free, there's no cost involved with using AI Studio, really start to like find the differentiated pieces. I think one of the big ones is long context. We'll talk about that in a sec, but left-hand nav, basic prompting experience. You can say, hey, to the models, it'll respond and give you something back. We have a prompt gallery, which sort of has this like massive breadth of stuff from like really silly things like coming up with trip ideas to optimizing code to like really trying to showcase the full extent of what you might be able to do with the models. Here we're looking at like the image of a hurricane and it's extracting a bunch of information, sort of doing OCR, if you will, of looking at the image and like pulling out some context, which is super interesting. I think the most like mind-blowing experiences for me using the Gemini models are like long context stuff. So if you go click this little plus button in the bottom right-hand corner, and then you go to sample media. This is just like the fastest version of this, but you can take something like a 30-minute video of this. In this case, it's a tour of the Natural History Museum in the US, and you add this in and you say, write me a list of all the museum, and folks will see how bad I am at spelling during this demo, all the museum exhibits throughout this video. And like a really good example of like something that would be, if you think about like, how would you do this in today's world without these models? Like it's basically impossible. Like maybe you could like break down a bunch of images and put those through and do that. But it's a lot of work. There's a lot of extra processing steps involved. And with AI Studio and with the Gemini models, like they just literally take in this capability. And this is the cool thing. You can see underneath the video, 531,000 tokens for this 30-minute video, and we'll see how long it ends up actually taking. But I think the long context use cases are the ones that usually blow my mind the most.
Yeah, and I think what's really interesting to startup builders here is once you get this data, I could see, for example, creating a directory. This is, we've talked about on the podcast around the opportunities in creating online directories. I'll link a couple of old episodes about that and how to do it. But there's so much data trapped in this media that you can go extract using some of these prompts.
Yeah. And I think it would also just be like really hard to do some of this. It's like a non-trivial amount of like scaffolding work that you would have to do. But like, this is a great example. And, somebody will have to, we're not going to watch the 30-minute movie of their video of the Natural History Museum. Somebody should go and validate that all these things really exist and the model's not hallucinating. But the model is really good at being able to pull some of this context out of a bunch of these different videos and images, et cetera. It's audio as well. Like really long audio could be something where like podcast platforms, you can extract a lot of intelligence out of things like that.
Quick break in the pod to tell you a little bit about Startup Empire. So Startup Empire is my private membership where it's a bunch of people like me, like you, who want to build out their startup ideas. Now they're looking for content to help accelerate that. They're looking for potential co-founders. They're looking for tutorials from people like me to come in and tell them, how do you do email marketing? How do you build an audience? How do you go viral on Twitter? All these different things. That's exactly what Startup Empire is. And it's for people who want to start a startup but are looking for ideas, or it's for people who have a startup but just they're not seeing the traction that they need. So you can check out the link to startupempire.co in the description.
I made this comment before about just like the core thing powering the AI studio experience is the models. And like really at the most basic level, you get a view of like all the different models that you can build with. And they're all Gemini models. There's some Gemma, which is our open source version of the models for folks who need open source models. We have those available as well. But you can just go and try all the different models and find out which one is best for you. And there's a bunch of different, for folks who have built with AI before, there's all these different trade-offs between different models. The 2.0 Flash model is a little bit more powerful. It's a little bit more expensive than the Flash Lite model, for example, which has higher rate limits, is a little bit less intelligent, but can do a lot of the same core things. You have the Pro model, which is an experimental variant today and like the most intelligent model we have available. And then we also have things like our reasoning model. And the reasoning models can do, this is like where the new frontier capabilities are coming from. We have our reasoning model available for free for developers. You can use it in AI Studio. You can go and get an API key and use it as well. Lots of cool, and we can look at some like good reasoning examples as well if you think that'd be interesting, Greg.
Yeah, let's go. And for folks who don't know, like, why is a reasoning model even interesting?
Yeah, I think the reality is you can get the model to like really think about different things that it wouldn't be able to do before. And what it isn't able to do before is usually sort of rooted in having to just like kind of give this first answer that comes to the model's head. And like, we can showcase a good example of this, and I'll just make up like this is probably like not the most optimized version of the prompt, but I'm going to take in a code snippet that I had in my IDE, which is sending a request to the Gemini API. And I'm going to say, turn this code snippet into a fully fledged website plus landing page plus SaaS app that is called.
By the way, just to be clear, you can get a job at Google in a senior position leading their AI efforts, even if you can't spell very well.
I cannot spell very well. And I think I can spell decently well, but it's just, maybe I'm actually just bad at typing. That might be my real problem. So we'll see how for like, and again, the prompt iteration process matters a lot just in using AI in general. So we'll see where this gets us, but we're going to try to turn this line of code, which is a basic Python snippet, into a fully fledged website landing page and a SaaS app, and we'll call it AI Studio, and we'll go and run this. And the cool thing that's happening, and you sort of see this affordance in the UI, which is this thoughts category. So here, the model is doing all of this thinking before it actually starts like generating the final output. So we're showing these thoughts in the UI. If you were using the API, you actually wouldn't see these thoughts. It's sort of abstracted behind the scenes, but we showcase it in the UI just to sort of give you an intuition of what's happening. And it talks about like, again, if you were to give me, as someone who is formerly a software engineer, the task of making a website, calling it AI Studio, giving it a landing page and making it a SaaS app, like I would probably write out something that looks like this, which is like, what are the desired outcomes? What is the code that I should be using? What are some different concepts? What does the structure look like? What should the technology stack be? How do I make a sort of optimized landing page with subheaders and feature sections and a CTA and visuals? What is the actual MVP for the SaaS functionality? It's calling out things like user authentication, a dashboard, different image generation tools, et cetera. And this goes on for like a long time. It like kind of belabors the thinking process, which is really great. If folks remember, in like early education, whenever you were supposed to write essays, you would have to like do these long like outlines. And like, I remember in some of my like Java programming classes, like my professors would be like, you have to do this like outline of what your code structure is going to look like. And I feel like that's like kind of represented now with the thoughts, which is really cool. So you can see those in the UI, and then you actually go into, again, a bunch of like more fully fledged content, and it starts to give you the code to do this. In some cases, it's omitting some of the actual details, which we could ask the model to follow up and give us the actual details, the HTML to make it happen, the CSS, et cetera, et cetera. And the total runtime for this was 23 seconds. So a lot more thought and processing compute went into actually generating this answer. Which is awesome. So I think this is sort of an early look at like what the reasoning models are capable of. And this is where a lot of the value is being created today. And again, my prompt was probably not well optimized to get, like, depending on what you want, like you could set this up to like really just get the code as the output, as an example, or like the 10 files that you would need to make this website work. You could probably get those out. And you can use this model for free inside of things like Cursor, as an example, if you go into AI Studio, click Get API key, and then create a new API key, you can actually just do this and have a free working version of the reasoning model inside of something like Cursor.
Beautiful. I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's fun. You can, same thing with like all the models actually. So like Cursor, as an example, has like the bring your own API key feature. You can go, get any of the Gemini models and go power your experience in Cursor, which is a lot of fun. The second thing that I'll show is this starter app. So like through this same lens of like, we want AI Studio to be the place where we sort of show you the art of the possible. We show you what you can actually do. We have these 3 really simple starter apps that showcase different model capabilities. I'll start with this. Perhaps we'll do this spatial understanding. Spatial understanding is really cool. So this is a capability that is like baked into the model itself, where it's like really able to deeply understand different objects and the ways in which they're sort of visually represented. So we have this basic UI experience, and the prompt is asking for the position of the items that are in this picture. And in this example, we're going to have it give us 2D bounding boxes. And I can send this prompt. The model does the magic behind the scenes, and then it actually dynamically overlays the bounding boxes for these images. And like, this is a really great example of like, what's being unlocked with these like multimodal capabilities, where you have like generic object detection, where you can like have, if you were building a website to sell furniture and you wanted to identify like, hey, what are the images that are in the picture of someone's room? And you want to like find those items on the internet, and like how do you crop the images like really dynamically using AI in real time to then go and like do reverse image search or something like that. This 2D bounding box works really well, and then you can basically get the coordinates of the objects in the image and be able to showcase those and do some searches on those.
How much does this fire you up? Because, it fires me up. When I see how powerful this is, to me, there's like probably 1,000 business ideas that you can build on top of this. Could you, just because you know the platform more intimately than I do, what's an example of applying this technology to a potential business idea that someone can go and start tomorrow?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that like the pulling like that like furniture shopping example I like a lot, whereas like you have images that have like a lot of like really busy content, and like how do you break them up into like the right things. There's like, I mean, a bunch of like boring stuff, but I've worked with a bunch of companies that are maybe not boring for everyone, but like worked with a bunch of companies that do like inventory management, and like this type of bounding box example like matters a lot for them, so that like they can just literally like snap pictures or have real-time video feeds to like, how much of the thing is being utilized. Like another boring example is like parking garages. Like you can have this like real-time look at like the utilization of parking garages. You can sort of do a very similar thing. There's probably a lot of like meta stuff with like satellite analysis, being able to like really explicitly bound different areas based on certain criteria of like find me, the cornfields, and like make those, in if you're trying to do some like meta analyses. Those are all very random examples. I'm not sure how useful those are for people.
Well, I think it's good. It gets the creative juices flowing. I think one way I think about it is there's a lot of service-based businesses that, they're agencies, consulting firms that do a service, a painful task for a business. You don't have to have humans do that anymore. You can now use technology to go and automate a lot of that stuff. And they might seem like boring businesses, but these are businesses that could be $1 million a year, 5 million, 10, 15, $20 million a year businesses.
Yeah, I think there's a huge, and to me, like the thing that gets me excited is there's all of the, like, I like the models. Like the model story to me is incredibly interesting, but it's like the model story in service of these like new differentiated capabilities that enable you to go build this stuff. And the reality is like the line between building products and like doing almost like doing like research as like even just a user, like historically research has meant you had to be a scientist or something. And I think the cool thing about LLMs is like research means like you just go like play with models and like figure out what these things can do, and like that actually unlocks all of these like new businesses that you could go and build. And I think like the bounding box example is like a very shallow but like also a very real reality of like the product experiences that you could build with something like that. And I'll show just a couple of other examples. Like this is just showing the like native function calling capabilities. So here we hooked up AI Studio and Gemini to the Google Maps API and sort of built this like kind of like really thin GeoGuessr experience where you can like basically have the Maps API like show you all different types of locations around the world. And the prompt here is like, take me somewhere in ancient history. And it takes you to this isolated island and talks about is a place of unique biodiversity with crossroads of ancient trade routes, the island's isolation, yada, 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 archaeological remains, etc. So there's like lots of cool, interesting experiences that you can build just like connecting existing like the combination of two products that like historically lived separate with function calling with AI brings this experience to life. And like you get this combinatorial explosion of different, like what happens if you take 5 random different products and you bring them all together and you put AI in the middle. Like that's actually like a real business all of a sudden. And the amount of work to do that is like actually pretty small relative to like historical SaaS product solutions. And the cool thing about this starter apps experience is all of the code is on GitHub. So you can literally just like click up in the top right-hand corner and then go onto GitHub and like download, and like the end-to-end product experience for some of these things is already working. So you can go and use these, hack on them, take them in whatever direction you want, get a free API key, power the entire experience. It's all on GitHub. It's all free to use, which is awesome.
Crazy.
Yeah.
What a time to be alive.
What a time to be alive. The last thing that I'll show in AI Studio is this real-time streaming. So we released the multimodal live API, which is what powers this experience that we're about to look at. But it brings to life like this, and we were talking about this before, but like this like AI co-presence of AI being able to see the things that you see and actually get the right context in order to help you. All right, so we're looking at the real-time live experience right now. I'm sharing my screen. We're looking inside of this real-time console. And right now, everything that I'm saying, the model is actually listening to. Model, can you say hi to us right now?
Okay, so it sounds like you're getting ready to do something fresh. Is there something that you will apply it to?
Yes, I'm sharing my screen. Can you see the code editor that I have open?
Yes, I can see the code editor. It looks like you have a Python file open named f.py, and it is using the Gemini API. Is that correct?
Yes. And if I was going to get this code to actually run, what's your suggestion of what I need to change? Like, I think there's maybe some placeholder stuff in here. Any ideas on what needs to change for this code to work?
Okay, you want to get the code working and are looking for suggestions on what to change, specifically regarding possible placeholder elements. Have you already tried to run the code? And if so, what output did you get?
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. I can try and run the code right now. Python 3 f.py, and we'll see what it says.
Okay, it seems that when you tried to run the code, you got an error message that says no such file or directory. This means the file path you entered is not valid. Are you sure that the file name and the location are correct?
Yeah, I was in the wrong directory. I'm running it now, but I'm getting a different error.
Okay, it seems that you are now getting a different error, which says API key not valid. This error means that the API key you're using is either incorrect or missing. Have you made sure to correctly input the correct Gemini API key into your code?
Yeah, it looks like that's the problem. I need to change this. It's just some placeholder text right now.
Okay, it looks like the issue is indeed with the placeholder text for the API key. So now you should input the correct API key in that place to get the program to work properly.
So this is, I have a couple of reactions from this experience. One, like I think this is really like an early look and feel of what's possible. I think like the cadence of the conversation can be sort of rough in some contexts, but it is showcasing like what the sort of raw capabilities are. We're building a bunch of like extra fine-tuned controls on the API side to like let the conversation flow. Like, for example, you see the model is like very excited to jump into the conversation as one example. And like maybe you'd want to instruct the model to like be a little bit less passive and like only jump in, at the right time. But like an early look at, I think the future that we're going to see with the multimodal live API is really the ability for the model to or just like generally for models to be co-present in the experiences that you are. And like you could imagine your IDE is the best experience of this. Like you do a single button click, and instead of having like code autocomplete, you actually have like someone pair programming there right with you, like a senior developer or whatever it is in the IDE with you, seeing the exact things that you see, like understanding the whole, and like you can share your entire screen, you could see the browser, and like literally in real time seeing the same stuff that you're seeing. And I think this unlocks like a huge new array of product experiences. And specifically for people building stuff, like one of the big challenges I think with AI and just like technology software in general is like there's this really steep curve, and like there's this wide distribution of like what people's capabilities are. And like I imagine this for like, my mom as an example, who's like, not, she's not technology illiterate, but like she's definitely like early on the technology sort of familiarization curve, and like is not the best person with technology. So like I imagine this is like helping her as she like works through, how to learn to code, which she has, which is really cool, or like how to edit a video in Adobe Premiere or something like that.
Yeah, for me, first of all, this is probably one of the more mind-blowing AI demos I've seen as of late. When I see this, I see this is the future of work. You're going to have it makes sense that you would have this AI partner, see what you're seeing and provide value and intelligence to whatever it is you're working on at any given moment. And you're happy to sacrifice some screen sharing because, if you can get your work done 1.5x, 2x, 3x faster, of course you're going to do it.
Yeah. And I'm not showing it in this example, but you can also do things, and this is visible on the right-hand side. Like we have a bunch of like native tool integrations. So like you can set up like sort of pseudo function calls. You can set up code execution, which like actually like spins up a Python virtual environment and like runs code for you and shows you the outputs of those things. You can enable grounding, which lets you like browse the internet and like actually find results. So like you could imagine in this coding example, like this would really work if I was getting an error that was saying, 400 API key not valid. I could have the model, browse to generativelanguage.googleapis.com and like give me, whatever the information is that's on that page. And like you can do all that without like actually leaving the bounds of the product experience that you're in. So it creates this like really unique way of like bridging the outside world into this unified experience. So I'm super excited. I agree with you. This is the demo that like continues to blow my mind as I see and play with it.
Yeah, and I know there's going to be people listening to this are going to be like, yeah, but this is so limited, or the voice, the intonations on the voice are kind of crappy, and it's like, well, okay, you can change the voice, but I think the point of all this stuff is, even if it's 93% there, 87% there, 80% there, 95% there, it doesn't matter. When you start playing with the tools, it lights off certain, it gives your connections in your brain that you wouldn't otherwise have thought. You're like, oh, you know what? This I can see this working for my mom. Like I never thought of that use case, by the way.
Yeah, I think my as someone who, shout out and credit to my mom who's learned to code as like, in like later cool in her life, and like the amount of time that I spent like literally pair programming with her, like learning Python, learning JavaScript and helping, like there's so many and like independent of my mom use case, like there's so many people who like don't actually have someone to help them learn whatever the thing is. And like, that's one of the biggest, like I remember for myself learning to code, like, yeah, sometimes there was like a tutor around or something, or I could go on Stack Overflow and get yelled at by people on the internet, but like that wasn't always the case. And like, there was times where it would be great when I'm late at night hacking on something to like really have someone to help me. And I think this sort of democratizes that access, which is really cool. So for folks who want to try this, aistudio.google.com/live, it's the stream real time on the left-hand side of the nav. You can play around with the experience. It's free. Send us feedback. We'll make it better. There's voices. You could change the output formats. And we're sort of pushing on trying to make this a really cool experience for people.
I'll include the link in the show notes that people can go and click. I'm like always, I'm always in the YouTube comments. So comment away, say what's up. Logan, thanks for coming on. Anything else you want to say before we head out?
Yeah, I think my last comment is just like this experience of, getting, a really, hopefully a cool experience in AI Studio for free. The API keys actually by default are also free. So you can get like 1.5 billion tokens using Gemini across a bunch of different models. For free today, the entire multimodal live experience. You can set this up in your API and like start prototyping that experience for free today, which is really cool. So like, I'm super happy. Like the angle of all this is we want to remove the economic burden for developers, for startups to start building really cool AI products. And we're doing that with AI Studio, and we're doing that with the API. And like when you want to go and scale to production, we have that path for you as well. So please, send us feedback. We'll keep making AI Studio better and the API better.
All right. I'd love to see it. Later, dude.
Thanks, Greg.